So the release of Sonic the Hedgehog 3 was much rejoiced. Its scope was bigger and more expansive than previous Sonic titles on the Mega Drive, and it introduced a new rival in the form of Knuckles the Echidna. Man, was it a great game, though I may be a little biased as that was the first ever Sonic game I ever played. And while the next one wasn't being worked on yet by the main heads at Sega, that would soon be Knuckles' Chaotix, the often overlooked portable console would get a lot of attention. Racing games, platforming titles, a Kirby golf game lookalike. There was quite an influx of 8-bit side games, their legacy cemented as unlockable side content in the bigger budget Sonic titles. Aspect was certainly busy during this period. Their previous title, Sonic Chaos, was frankly as average as platformer games could be on this system, being a kind of return to form after the inexplicably difficult Sonic 2, but the team were consistently improving and innovating their approach to the formula. They were introducing new characters already on Sonic's console of origin, so why not triple that effort? Come now, it made sense when writing it. Released for the Sega Game Gear shortly after Sonic & Knuckles for the Mega Drive, specifically on November 1994, on the surface, Sonic Triple Trouble doesn't hold much water. Sure, it looks and sounds better than previous titles on the system, with a memorable soundtrack to boot, but specifically during the time when I first played it in the 2000s, it would occasionally just be lumped in with the other jumpy 8-bit Sonic games. Indeed, the Blue Blur's Master System and Game Gear catalogue is collectively a singular gaming experience, at least for those who've played the compilations. But I'd like to imagine how peeps experienced it when the game first came out. Or hell, maybe they read the Archie Sonic special named after it, though in my opinion that was pretty meh. Hope you like slapstick, and puns. This platforming title would certainly gain more notice when Fanworks metaphorically unearthed it, and also the general style of Sonic Superstars brought concepts and characters back into the limelight. Spurred on by these collective releases, it certainly made a gun-toting scoundrel in particular more popular. For this video, I'd like to talk about not only the original release of Sonic the Hedgehog Triple Trouble, but also the fan remake Sonic Triple Trouble 16-bit by Noah Copeland and his crew. A hefty double feature is upon you, so buckle up ladies and gentlemen and everyone in between, before Fang steals your car. Since the start of its development process, this game was always intended to be a standalone sequel to Sonic Chaos, and a kind of finale to the Hedgehog's platforming outings on the Game Gear. Its working title was Sonic Chaos 2, and in its original localization it's known as Sonic and Tails 2, going by Sonic Chaos's name in Japan to affirm the similarities. Not a bad template to work off of really, and that meant a couple of elements from that game were reincorporated. Both the good, like the rocket shoes, and the bad, which is most problems 8-bit Sonic inherently came packaged with, like excessive slowdown. At the very least, it's known that Triple Trouble was built with specifically the Game Gear's limitations in mind, which is why the HUD is kept to the side for a better view of Sonic and the equally adjusted level design. The game also has a story, punctuated further with a lively introduction cutscene before the title. Not a new thing to these games, but certainly something that catches your attention. It shows Knuckles collecting the Chaos Emeralds, the Echidna in what seems to once again be an antagonist role, with Sonic and Tails giving chase. The last emerald is left in Dr. Robotnik's clutches, who flies off in a weird, steam-powered jetpack. That's what it's like here, but according to the Japanese manual, it's a whole different story. Still set in Mobius, and yes, I'm going to keep calling Sonic's world Mobius, at least until I reach the adventure games where it would essentially just be Earth. Dr. Robotnik has all the Chaos Emeralds on him, but an accident causes all but one of them to disappear into the special stage, showing that even when the villain has all of them in his possession, he just cannot get a W. Sonic and Tails are just after the Chaos Emeralds again, but the big bad goes and tricks Knuckles the Echidna into going after them. Does this take place after Sonic 3, or is this just part of these games' original continuity and the 8-bit reintroduction of Knuckles? Don't ask questions. Sonic and Knuckles confront each other, but they are listened in on by a sneaky treasure hunter, Fang the Sniper. So this spike-toothed Muppet coveted the 5 Chaos Emeralds, and then we're off to the races. 3 different factions colliding on their adventures, screwing over each other to collect or keep the glowing rocks for themselves. And speaking of Fang, let's go into his character a little, as he is easily the standout character in the Hedgehog's 8-bit lineup. Though before continuing on, if you're enjoying the sort of stuff I make, kindly send over a like, comment, or hit that subscribble button. It'll let me know I'm doing a good job. Fang the Sniper, or Nack the Weasel to Sonic the Comic or early Archie Sonic readers, it's his beta name, or Fang the Hunter if you've played Sonic Superstars, or if you like annoyingly correcting everybody, is the product of many a creator's vision. He was designed by Shinichi Higashi, who worked as an artist and designer at Sega for a time, and Tadashi Hiroi would add in his personality as a clumsy, four-fingered treasure hunter. His foppish nature is showcased in every scene he's in, as limited as they are. In the final game, he mainly occupies the optional special stages, but I'll get to those later. His species is officially a Jerboa, though around that time the localization would suggest he was half Jerboa and half wolf for whatever reason. He rides in his hoverbike, the Marvelous Queen, and it's also notable that instead of his iconic pop gun that would shoot corks instead of traditional lasers or energy bullets, during this game's development he legit had a proper firearm, or at least one in the conventional classic Sonic aesthetic. I'm not kidding, going by an early build shown in magazine articles, there was very well a chance you could have run into him in the open and wham, he would have pointed a Glock at you. Maybe it was a planned cutscene. I do rather like Fang's design. He's like if Wile E. Coyote invested in more gadgets and took on a life of crime. And before I forget, let's take a hot minute to appreciate the box art. The North American one takes the cake, again drawn by the late Greg Martin, and while I feel it retains vestiges of 90s cheese in how some of the characters were drawn, it doesn't lessen the fun impact. Sonic looks great, Knucks looks more confused as to how we got here, and Robotnik curiously has his Western cartoon design from that era. Perhaps it was to promote the adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog cartoon, like with the 8-bit port of Sonic Spinball, though this time his in-game appearance has his more recognisable classic self. The Japanese box art is more of the standard stuff, lots of shapes and a blank white backdrop, although I'd be lying if I didn't get a kick out of the neat character poses and the overall appealing composition. They both just look really good here. The name Sonic and Tails 2 is thematically appropriate, as like in Sonic Chaos, you can pick either one of them as the player character. This grants you Sonic's usual abilities and fast speed, the Strike Dash returning from Sonic Chaos, which gives you a brief second of invincibility before taking off, and the Rocket Shoes now let you do a flip, or Tails' flight ability, which are still only activated on a standstill, but has somewhat improved maneuverability, and his Hyper Heli Tails monitors, which is essentially the Fox Boy's equivalent to the Rocket Shoes. You can also skim across the water like in previous 8-bit Sonic games. I don't know, it's fun to pull off. Both characters are capable of riding the returning Pogo Springs, which can be obtained from specific item boxes, and an additional move to the duo's moveset that I don't think has appeared before or since is the Flying Spin Attack. Basically, once you launch upward off a spring, you hit the jump button to initiate your ball form for a few seconds, and only then because you can't do it twice in one go. Really, it's a timing thing. Use this extra protection when you need it, and don't worry if you muck up while doing so. Triple Trouble's structure is the usual affair if you're used to Sonic's previous 8-bit adventures, if expanded somewhat. You still got 6 zones to run through, with 3 acts apiece, the last one containing a boss battle, rings are plentiful for gaining an extra hit, monitors to bash open for power-ups or checkpoints, and springs! The latter is particularly common here. You'll find them popping out of the ground, placed near hazards in order to trip you up, and nearly every tree in the first stage has one growing out of the top. Are springboards in Sonic's universe harvested from trees? Don't worry, I'm joking. But really though, the level transitions are visually quite appealing, showcasing the typography flying in and the player running off to a short, peppy tune. The first letters of each zone also have a different colour from each other, a very neat visual touch. Bonus panels appear at the end of every non-boss level, and the prizes you can get from them depend on certain criteria in the act. Starting out as a Robotnik face, it lands on a flicky by default, which nets you nothing but a cute bird to stare at, a blank if you got 55 or 85 rings, which in turn will land on a ring, which gives you an extra 10 for the player's final ring tally. It can land on either Sonic or Tails if you collected over 50 rings, or sometimes when you have none at the end, and if it's the player character then you get an extra life, and your partner's 10,000 bonus points. Knuckles if you have 0 rings and lives, which nets you a continue, and a Chaos Emerald, which grants you 50 rings at the start of the next level. Also, the maps are literally massive. Levels in Sonic Triple Trouble have more to explore both horizontally and vertically. Looks like you have a lot of wandering to do, little guy. I like his idle animation in this game also. He's so eager to get moving. Expect a lot of secrets to be hidden in these zones, including the entrances to the special stages. Instead of Chaos Emeralds being discovered laying on the ground, or bonus areas reached immediately upon collecting 100 rings, there are instead straight-up item boxes hidden in tucked-away areas in each act. They only take you there via a portal if you have 50 rings on you. If you don't, nothing happens. Special stages in this game mainly have a kind of mysterious temple aesthetic and a lot of platforming gimmicks, at least in the 2D ones. Under a time limit, which can be extended when you crack open specialised monitors, you are tasked with manoeuvring through obstacle courses of springs, breakable spheres, invisible platforms, and weird balls. Or in the 3D ones, fly across the sky in the tornado to collect rings. These ones are perhaps my least favourites, as in addition to the unexpected POV, your hitbox is surprisingly small for a sprite that occupies so much of the screen, and the objective of how many rings you need to get to pass is surprisingly lofty. Completing any of these levels has you confront Fang in his wily gadgets. They are of varying levels of threatening. The first time you even see the dude, his trap backfires on him. But right past is the chamber where you collect the Chaos Emerald, there being 5 to get in total. And to top it off, this is the first 8-bit platforming Sonic game to have a time attack mode, which omits a level select and savable scores on the hardware due to the handheld's lack of a battery backup, but is noteworthy in that it has its own unique act for it. Ever wanted to ride spin coasters in Grand Turquoise Zone? Well, you can now. Speaking of zones, I suppose I'll get into them and also the soundtrack, because I think it's a step up from other 8-bit Sonic games, except for maybe the first one. From what I know, Triple Trouble had one sole composer, Yayoi Wachi, who for all I know is most popular for making the music of this game and Panzer Dragoon 2 Zwei for the Sega Saturn. I actually gave that OST a listen, and while not too remarkable in its choice of instruments, the general beat and magnetic vibe shan't be ignored. I like the fresh 8-bit melodies of Sonic Triple Trouble, from the gameplay motif heard in the title and power-up themes, the character selects music, and just about every level theme. The game is full of really neat tunes that are catchy as heck. And special mention goes to Fang's theme song that plays whenever he shows up. It's honestly a much more engaging boss theme than the one for the big robots themselves, and Sunset Park Zone Act 3's music, which is probably the most iconic track in the game, even if it was originally from Sonic Chaos and set at a lower pitch. Bro, you fight a robot train in this game? Well, that's one for the bestiary. Badnik time! Spring shells are the first enemies you'll encounter, and basically act like the Boingo bots from Sonic Chaos. Bomberberry is the name of a flying robot that holds a spike ball bomb below them, dropping it on you if you get too close. Tart Turtle, the first boss of the game. I suppose they dropped the Master Robot moniker completely. It floats back and forth, and in the second phase it can only be struck when you do a flying spin attack. Ladybuggies ride back and forth in spin coasters. Their destruction allows you to commandeer their vehicle, and they may or may not be a motorbug variant. Moskies return, now called Kamechas, their Japanese name. They dart straight downward and are more of a problem when close to wind turbines. Rydle Taps sit on lift platforms and can fire twin bullets from their cannons every now and then. Marv Shupopoulos Gur, a Badnik train with several carriages. Its head can launch cannonballs at you, and the challenge is more in reaching the thing. Makes a funny face when exploding. Rabibins are bunny robots that simply hop forward. They somewhat resemble Sonic 1's unused splats badnik. Wood Butterundorf. I'm really not sure where they came up with these names. It's a giant snake-like robot that swings back and forth. After its defeat, there is a lengthy sequence where you avoid its pieces falling from the top of the screen. Penguin bombers, badniks that have a lit fuse on their heads. They'll charge at you the moment they spot you and attempt to take you out with them. Spidle Tap is basically the same as the Rydle Tap, based on a spider rather than an orange. Giga Thomas Penn, in quotes, a penguin bomber maker that floats via harmful jet engines. It gets easier to defeat the more hits you land on it before it gets knocked into a pit. Eliotes swim back and forth underwater, and only their heads are their weak points. When you hit them, they just sort of scatter into pieces. It's not like badniks are powered by flickies in this game anyway. Mecha Hyokos are the usual hopping baby birds, this time hopping out of generators when you hit a button. They're almost a mascot for these 8-bit Sonic games with how frequently they appear. Ever wanted to see a weaponized version of two springs facing each other? Don't worry, bomblers take advantage of that. They are tricky to hit, though there thankfully aren't as many in the game. Alright, let's go into the rest of the game and its levels, shall we? Playing as either Sonic or Tails, you encounter a lot of different level gimmicks on your journey to get back the Chaos Emeralds. We start out in Great Turquoise Zone, which is similar to Turquoise Hill Zone from Chaos, and distances itself further from South Island's usual checkerboard grasslands. Sunset Park is next, a sprawling abandoned theme park with railways, spin coasters, bombs that explode as you run over them, and air-powered turbines that only exist to make you fall straight down if you happen to be in mid-air. Meta Junglera Zone, meant to be a mix of jungle and Shangri-La, though I don't blame you for the confusion, is the third zone of the game. An ancient, dense forest, baskets in seas of sinking mud launch you into the air, and I hope you Collision Chaos fans are excited because there's those bubble things that ricochet you everywhere. Robotnik Winter Zone follows that, being a slopey ice level where you get to ride on snowboards from monitors. Interesting title too, considering that it remains in the original localization, making this one of the few times Eggman's Western name gets a mention in Japan. The landscape was supposedly snowed over as a result of the Doctor testing his ultimate weapon, which is why it looks so peculiar and is filled with snowdrifts. Watch out! Tidal Plant Zone, the game's underwater level. When I was younger, the level name in the background made me assume that this was like inside a literal plant. Also, Tails gets his Sea Fox submarine here, found laying around. This caught me by surprise, as I swear Tails' adventure was where this first appeared. Sonic gets propeller shoes, but Tails' one is cooler because you can launch missiles and drive forward. Ow. Okay, don't do that. It's here where the player character and Knuckles have their showdown after encountering him at the end of Act 3 zones. Didn't expect Knuckles to be the type to pilot advanced mechs, but here we are. Oh, they died together. Doomed Yuri. Atomic Destroyer Zone is the final level, and is graphically very similar to Sonic Chaos's and Sonic 2 8-bit's last zone, right down to there being warp tubes, laser traps, and Mecha Hyoko spawners. Supposedly this takes place underwater, according to the manual. Kill the baby! Oh hey, it's Metal Sonic, in one of his easiest and shortest confrontations ever, though it must have been pleasantly surprising for first-time players. He advances on you at the start like fricking Sonic EXE. At the end of the zone, Fang makes his getaway after it seems like he's gonna confront you one last time. Dr. Robotnik fights you in a mech with multiple phases, and in the end, he loses his Chaos Emerald and falls into a pit after escaping scot-free twice. And Knuckles is freed after apparently getting caught after drowning, probably from failing the doctor. Now, shake hands and make up, you guys. The end scene varies whether you collected all 5 emeralds, having it just end with Fang and the try again screen, or the gang flying off on the tornado across the ocean for a simple yet satisfying finale. The music is surprisingly somber. Wait, special thanks to Hideo Kojima? Sonic Triple Trouble was considered pretty mid when it came out, even by me when I first played it, when I couldn't think critically about anything. Understandable, the Hedgehog's legacy was with the Mega Drive, not any of those 8-bit consoles, and a lot of aspects did make this game unfortunately similar to Sonic Chaos released a year prior. But honestly, in the time since, that opinion has somewhat shifted, if just a tad. It certainly pushed the Game Gear to its limits, performance-wise, even if it made the game speed stutter, and the handling of its cast made it really feel like a three-way tug-of-war for the series' MacGuffins, in as much of a capacity as the hardware could allow. A shame it was only on the Game Gear though. It would be left for fans to actually make ROM hacks with wider view screens and whatnot, giving us an idea on just what the game would look like if it had a Master System port as originally intended. And another reason this game might have gotten more of a following is because, well, The world at large saw a pretty spiffing fan remake of it. Yep, you know the one I'm talking about. Fan games are difficult to get right, not only to code, but also to stay true enough to the source material while being a unique identity of its own. I've briefly covered my fair share of fan-made Sonic games on this channel, at least some in the fan remake category, some of them remarkable and others remaining unfinished and abandoned. But while they can be a real pain to develop, requiring a lot of time, talent and patience, that just makes it all the better when they eventually get polished up and released. Sonic Triple Trouble 16-bit is one such game, created by Noah N. Copeland, a programmer and musician who felt like the original game, in his words, was a good classic Sonic game buried under 8-bit limitations. Originally coming out in August 2nd, 2022, the game would take 5 years to create and finish, launching off of Alexander Norberg's framework emulating the physics of the Mega Drive games, and with cover art by D. Lightyears after Copeland reached out and they combined forces. Before I go into detail on how much they replicated the 16-bit nature, I simply must give my praises to the team and their promotional art. Not only did they recreate the original cover art with its shading and less off-model characters, but there was even a 3-page promotional comic, I suppose because around that time Sega did the same to tie onto their releases. Detailed in it is a quick setup of the events of this version's narrative world, each page focused on the 3 antagonistic forces. Fang gets assigned to help a client collect the 7 Chaos Emeralds, Knuckles barely has time to relax before the Master Emerald detects residual energy and fricking Metal Sonic flies in, and Dr. Robotnik discovers that the Chaos Emeralds have positive and negative energies, and drawing from the latter, he can potentially make his own set of Dark Emeralds. Unlike in the original game's intro and manual summary, this illustrated medium is truly a better presentation for the race to get the Chaos Emeralds by 3 different parties. In terms of plot and the game's foundation and aesthetic, Sonic Triple Trouble 16-bit acts as an immediate sequel to Sonic 3. Not only are the duo's sprites close to how they look in that game, I kept trying to accidentally make Sonic do the insta-shield, it was so similar. The sound font they go with, including for the invincibility music, the way special stages are executed with giant rings and star posts, heck, even the file select feature is directly ripped from Sonic 3, but also the story takes place precisely after the events of that game's conclusion. Sonic and Tails flying off on the tornado, Knuckles looking out at them fondly, and Dr. Robotnik recovering from the destruction of the Death Egg. Not like that would interfere with his plans. Honestly, first impressions are already solid once you boot up the thing. The title screen has some good pixel art with Fang flying back and forth, kind of like what Tails was doing on Sonic 3's one. Not to mention Knuckles popping out if you wait too long after unlocking him. You got funky menus with that kind of whimsical energy reminiscent of Sonic Mania, and while at first you can only play as Sonic and Tails, the tutorial level where you get used to the updated controls has one banger of an opening boss battle. Afterwards, the Chaos Emeralds are collected by Robotnik after strong-arming them from Super Sonic, only to have them disappear except one, which we later discover was Knuckles' doing. What proceeds is another race for the Chaos Emeralds, Knuckles and Fang also being a part of it, before it cuts to a title screen, clarifying that the adventure has truly begun. Whoa, they included that colour palette fading effect too? Anyway, let's start talking version differences. All zones are more richly detailed, with a different background and music track for the second act, seamless transitions from level to level, even if that puts the contrasting times of day into more stark relief. Seriously, it's daytime, and then it's sunset, and then it's daytime again. Remixed boss battles against much more potent robots, and also a mini-boss battle between acts against Fang or Knuckles, depending on the zone. Playing as Sonic and Tails has you freely toggle between them, giving you the best of both worlds in terms of abilities. This includes power-ups like shields too, essentially giving you 2 extra hit points if you so choose, or if you want to keep riding a snowboard. You having fun there? Each of the elemental shields are in this game, including that gold one from Sonic 3D Blast that lets you do a primitive form of the homing attack, and they included some sound bites from Sonic 3's soundtrack and incorporated them as sound effects for level gimmicks and when you smash open item boxes. It's satisfying destroying things in this game, but can you still skim across the water? Yeah! Special stages now come in 2 flavours. Ones opened via star posts lead you to bonus stages, there being different ones depending on how many rings you have. Personally, they are pretty fun and are rewarding enough that I don't ignore most of them this time around, and the ones where you get the Chaos Emeralds through giant rings are redesigned as obstacle courses, where you race Fang on his hover bike. Your rings count down and need to be collected to survive, but you also have the thieving purple guy to contend with, though luckily he can be held back with a good zap. Seeing this design for the special zone reminds me of the one from the fan-made Sonic Time Twisted, which I'm pretty sure this is a homage to, and their development team has a bit of overlap with this one. Getting the 6 available Chaos Emeralds secures you the game's good ending, and also lets you transform into a super state when you gain 50 rings when replaying the game. The game comes with a sound test with secret illustrations and cheat codes, and a very extravagant competition mode. I don't have anyone to play that with, but thankfully there's a solo player mode with little cutscenes and character portraits. Totally makes me think of Sonic Battle. The music had Copeland and a whole team of peeps in the composer seat, including DV2, X-Prodigy, Rigidatos MS, John Tay, and many more. And while the soundtrack in its entirety is a decent blend of Mega Drive instruments with their funky twang sounds, for a lack of a better word, I do have a couple favourites that I enjoy vibing to. And with updated gameplay and levels come updated enemies. I actually had the opportunity to ask them what the team named the individual badniks, and Copeland was kind enough to relay to me the information, with most of them just using the names detailed in the Sonic the Hedgehog Encyclopedia. I will go over all of them except the bosses, for the reason that they'd just be more fun to experience yourself. And so, Shell Springer is the new name of the spring shells, the slow spring turtle badniks. Former berries behave similarly to before, floating around on the spot before producing their spiky cargo and fleeing. Coconut's MK2 somewhat resemble the monkey robot from the Adventures of cartoon, though they are functionally exactly as their original Sonic 2 models. Crabmeats Jr. is the name of the blue and red crab badniks that often exist in 8-bit titles, now making an appearance here. Leons phase in and out of view and resemble their Sonic Adventure designs. Depending on the colour, they either shoot a projectile or whip with their tongues. Moto Rider is the new name of the Ladybird badniks that drive back and forth in carts. They are proper Motorbug variants in this reimagining. Needle Nose is the name given to the Mosquito badniks, their name used in Knuckles' Chaotix. MJ is the name given to Rydle Tap badniks. I think there might be a joke I'm missing. Manhole moles are original badniks that pop in and out of holes and fire a projectile, inspired by the Morgul enemies in Sonic Advance. Beetle bugs move back and forth and will charge at you if you happen to be standing in front of them. Cluckers from Sonic 2 are here, and act in line how they were in Sonic Mania, right down to the palette. Rabbit bins are unchanged, although they do hop back and forth instead of leaping off cliffs. Drago Strikers are buzzer variants that slowly fly forward, dropping explosive segments when you pass underneath them, based on an unused Sonic 2 badnik. Shell Blasters, seemingly the same ones from Sonic 3, act as the usual platform-occupying enemies, shooting 2 projectiles in an arc. Araxki is the name of the badniks that slide on the surface of mud. They don't do much else. Kate Killers are variants of the Caterkiller badniks that cling to walls, only emerging to spit a projectile towards you. Basket snakes are harmless, simply popping out of the baskets and giving you a lift. Flyers are red-coloured nebulas that lack the ability to drop spike balls when you fly below. Egg-E. Yeah, they're just Pixar's WALL-E but made by Dr. Eggman. Penguin bombers function the same, though they are found in a passive state before you approach too closely. Spidle taps are basically the same. Lance walls float back and forth at relatively quick speeds, stopping only to launch their spike at you. Frost Inauts are a chill version of the Orbinaut that send all their spike balls at once instead of one at a time, leaving them open to attacks afterwards. There's a rare penguin badnik called Oddjob. It's interesting. The Seal robots, based on the Master Robot from Sonic 2 8-bit, appear instead as helpful bouncers throughout the zone. They are called Seal Boops. Stego is the name of a green Stegosaurus. They roll back and forth and whip with their tails like a scorp. Tyrannos fly in the air, constantly dashing towards you if you're in range. Dimetrosaurs are Dimetrodon badniks armed with a buzzsaw on their back. They just kind of stand there and look at you. E-Electrics are no longer the only enemy in Tidal Plant Zone, basically functioning the same but are slightly bigger. Lurchkin is a type of urchin badnik that are immobile at first, but will try to roam towards you if you're close, though they can't reach far. Megajaws are similar to Chop Chop badniks in that they float around in the water and swim after you if you come by. Thorncroaks are covered in spines which they launch in a star-like formation when hopping, leaving them defenseless. Zupas are crane flies that just sort of zoom about, numing towards you if you're in their line of sight. Bobby is the name of a bobbit worm badnik that appears underwater, popping out from the walls. Even after being destroyed, they respawn infinitely. There's a boss version called Big Bobby. Bomb lures have been altered so they don't bounce between springs. Makes them a tad easier to deal with, really. Patroller was actually an unused badnik, brought back in this version. Once a target is spotted, they will shoot out homing missiles. Elite-looking Leons are called Devil Leons. They are basically the same as their Grand Turquoise equivalent, but are much quicker in their attack patterns. And Egg Swats for the upgraded-looking Meg Robos at the end. Instead of guns, they fire with a barrage of lasers. Before I cover the rest of the game, I'm actually going to do something I haven't done before in these retrospectives, and put a timestamp in case no one wants to see spoilers. If you haven't already, I honestly encourage you to experience this game for yourself. It puts a spotlight on the delightful gameplay and shows what it looks like when the developers truly capture the energetic spirit of the Mega Drive era. Alright, let's dig right into the mid to late game stuff. The game is evidently straightforward in how much it expands on the original material, and nowhere is that more strong than during the very first main boss battle. It does a bait and switch with the first boss badnik, giving it the same tactics and size of the one fought on the Game Gear. However, the second phase has it transform into a gigantic weapons platform, applying an action-packed lens to the whole experience. The train boss has an extended platforming segment where you avoid Fang sniping you, or a whole wall of flame chasing you, which initially threw me off, not gonna lie. The snake boss has more mechanics to avoid, like its fangs and an annoying bouncy obstacle, and defeating it results in this climactic escape sequence from the temple, which for some reason gave me Quackshot vibes. Egg Zeppelin Zone was added in as an in-between level. It's like a mix of Wing Fortress and Flying Battery, and is also where Dr. Robotnik starts experimenting with Chaos Emerald duplicating. Speaking of which, Robotnik Winter Zone is where that airship crashes, and the second act begins with this visually stunning yet sudden gameplay shift into a chase segment. Fun fact, it was inspired by a similar sequence in Mickey Mania, which also had a Mega Drive port. Now here's something I didn't know before. Purple Palace Zone is a secret level accessed by falling into a pit at the end of Robotnik Winter. Its aesthetic is reminiscent of the 2D special stages in the OG Triple Trouble, right down to the breakable spheres. It's essentially the hidden palace zone of the game, even having you beat up dinosaurs. Tidal Plant looks a little more like an actual industrial area while still keeping its vibrant colours, and the second act has you explore underwater mazes in the Sea Fox. Reminds me of the Echo the Dolphin games and how you manoeuvre through these, though I know it's a callback to Tails' game. Oh right, the red guy. So Knuckles has been hounding the main duo throughout the whole game, and going fist to foot during sub-boss encounters. Fang has been too, but that's frankly expected of the guy. However, how come Knuckles gets tricked once again, immediately following the last adventure? This takes place literal minutes after Sonic 3. Well, it's not entirely given away, but there is a reason that Knuckles gets attacked by Metal Sonic, and then on the next page suddenly is hard-pressed in collecting the Chaos Emeralds. Following the boss battle against him in Robotnik Winter, a short circuit reveals that throughout the entire game, we had been duped. Knuckles was never the one fighting Sonic and his buddy, it had been Metal Sonic this whole time. Alright, giving the fan-favourite character a bigger role than just a boss battle, I commend the team for that. Another creative foreshadowing is in the music. Knuckles' boss battle theme incorporates his prototype music from Sonic 3, and has a specific off-key leitmotif. One Metal Sonic fight later, and the last platforming level, Atomic Destroyer, is revealed, where it officially takes place on another space station. An uncountable number of things occur here. There's traps and hazards everywhere, a robot gains a super form, Fang the boy failure flounders around, Dr. Robotnik uses Dark Emerald's power to force you into obstacle courses before proceeding, like that segment in the tail end of Sonic Mania, and Metal Sonic is encountered again. And here is where my one notable criticism of the game emerges: the final bosses of Sonic and Tails' main campaign. On the original Game Gear title, due to the limitations of the system, Metal Sonic and Dr. Robotnik's mechs didn't have that many offensive capabilities. Metal would dive at you, either with his arms out or when activating his B maximum overdrive attack, and Robotnik's final mechs were simple and repetitive because some final bosses in 8-bit Sonic were repetitive. Seeing them have no change in this fan reimagining was a little disappointing, especially considering how hyped you feel going through the final level and hearing the rave party of a track. You remember the first boss, the one meant to be a callback and bait and switch combo? I felt like I was just experiencing that again, but without the innovative twist to surprise you. At least Knuckles' trio of final bosses were generally much more fun and challenging. But either way, defeating Dr. Robotnik nets you his Chaos Emerald, the real Knuckles is freed, and in the regular ending they go off and the credits roll to them chilling in the tornado, from a side view this time. If you had collected the 6 Chaos Emeralds, Metal Sonic will make a surprise reappearance, take all of the glowing rocks, and harness the power of the Dark Emeralds to achieve a unique transformation, Dark Metal Sonic. While it visually looks nothing more than a recolored Rocket Metal from Sonic the Fighters, he truly is a force to be reckoned with. Good thing the well-timed arrival of Knucks and Fang are there to distract him long enough for Sonic to achieve a super state, and then the true climactic battle takes place, Final Trouble Zone. What proceeds is a multi-tiered space battle between the two, starting with the Rocket Metal form, then a larger red-coloured mech made from scraps that is meant to resemble his unused Sonic Extreme design. I will get to that game someday. And then a bigger one, all while the background alternates between space, planet Mobius below, and then space again. It's a really cool background. Dark Metal Sonic's defeat leads to the ending where all the main characters escape safely, and Super Sonic races through space as triumphant music plays. Roll credits. In terms of other characters, Amy Rose is only playable in free play mode, coming attached with either her Sonic 3 Air, Sonic Origins Plus, or Sonic Superstars movesets, which you can toggle between in the options. Knuckles' similar campaign is unlocked after beating the main game once, Metal Sonic is unlocked after clearing it as Knuckles, and Fang the Sniper is unlocked for free play mode after doing all of the special stages, the latter also being playable in competition mode. You know, it makes sense that this game has a trio of unlockable characters. Sonic Triple Trouble 16-bit is such a well-crafted game that it almost eclipses the original. I would say check it out if you enjoy the continuity and the spirit of Triple Trouble with its placement in the dubious classic Sonic timeline. It's free and compatible on Mac and Android phones. If you like the 8-bit nature of the Hedgehog's adventures, perfectly preserved, timeless yet somewhat jank, then by all means try your hand at the original game. It's been ported onto many Sonic compilations, including Sonic Gems Collection and Sonic Origins Plus. It's the least that Fang deserves in his debut title, even if he gets buggered up a lot. Now, on the tier list, I would agree that the original game isn't too different from its predecessor, but it is still an improvement in some aspects. As such, it gets a C rank, though I respect the reason it's considered the best Sonic game on the 8-bit console. Cheers for watching this video until the end, or listening. I know peeps like listening to these vids instead, which I'm still thankful for. Whoa, what was that? Oh man, the viewers must have gotten a kick out of that. In the next video, I'll be checking out Knuckles' Chaotix, released for the elusive 32X, the Mega Drive add-on. I'll find a way to play, I always do. Thank you ever so much for watching, if indeed you still are, and I'll see you in the next video.
Fatality.